Be careful here. Don't move your king down. Don't move it on the same varlkir as the queen. Oh my god. Rook g5. You are about to witness the final match between two of the best players in our Chess Pog Legends streamer tournament. These two players played a best of 7 games in order to determine who is the tournament winner. The games are 10+5 rapid games, alternating colors between each games. Winner is the first person to achieve 4 points. Let's get into the recap. So for game 1 here, we have 2 players. Jack Penguin's one of the highest rated players in the tournament. He's played hundreds of games on chess.com and is probably going to be the favorite to win this match from the audience perspective. Jack also has an undefeated record, barring one single game that he lost throughout the entirety of the tournament, and has had a really hot streak. Joe Rawl, on the other hand, one of the underdogs of the tournament, has actually taken down some of the best players in the entire event so far, including Widweez, who is one of the highest, if not the highest rated, and K-Smack, who is probably one of the most aggressive players. But Joe Rawl is prepared for this match. Joe Rawl's been playing a lot of chess, has only been playing for a few months, but has already shown that he is a strong contender to win this entire tournament. Let's see how these players begin the game. E4, D6. Let's see how the players are going to proceed from here. We have knight F3 from Jack and E5 from Joe Rawl. So both players doing fine so far. Bishop B5, knight C6. This is almost similar to a Ruy Lopez type setup, except in the Ruy Lopez, typically you haven't played this D6 move yet because you block in your dark square bishop. Anyways, we have castles A6. Both players playing a great game so far. Jack Penguin moving the bishop out of the way, bishop E6, and pawn into the center. So Jack Penguin trying to already crack open the center, particularly because Joe just hasn't castled yet. So this is probably going to be of benefit to Jack as he starts to chip away at some of the structure here. But then knight F6 from Joe Rawl, and he has made a critical blunder because D4 forks the knight and the bishop. And this wasn't so apparent to notice right away. And even Jack Penguin himself misses this move and takes the pawn on E5 instead, completely missing a fork in a winning position. We have takes, and now taking what is actually a free pawn in the center because the knight is pinned to the king. It is not really a defender. Neither player really wants to take with their queen, ideally, because you do not want to relinquish control of the open file. However, as soon as I say that, Joe Rawl decides, hey, it's in my best interest to trade queens, even though I'm down a pawn. My king is a little bit weaker. Computer likes is a little bit better for white. And we have bishop out and then a bit of a simplification here. And oh my God, Jack Penguin misses an opportunity to fork the rook and the king by taking the C6 pawn. He completely misses it. And it's not even super hard to see. Even if you didn't know that these were being attacked, this pawn's just not defended. And it was just used to capture the knight. But Jack's not going to play that, and now Joe Rawl has an opportunity to escape with the king, and now it's taking this is still good. It's just a free pawn if you just gobble on C6, but Jack misses it again. Not only does Jack miss it, but he plays a very passive rook E1, which does help support this pawn and potentially set up a fork in the future, but it's pretty easy to prevent if Joe Rawl plays correctly. A move such as something like just moving the bishop out of the way is totally fine here. Even bishop E5 to prevent this pawn from moving forward and also attacking the knight. But Joe Rawl misses the fork threat. For a second time, Joe Rawl is allowing Jack to fork, and this time, Jack is not letting him get away with it. Jack is playing the move, pawn to E5, bishop C5, takes, and now Jack is just up quite a bit of material here. Full minor piece, and look at these pawns. Joe Rawl has 4 pawn islands. 4! And the king is on an open file. The only thing that maybe Joe Rawl has is a rook that's activated and bishops that see along these nice open diagonals, but let's see what he can do with this. Knight E4, bishop comes out, bishop here trying to offer a trade, giving up the B2 pawn though, and okay, the rook in the corner is being attacked. Pretty easy to see that, right? So rook slides over to B1. Jack Penguin is still completely dominating. It is +4. All you need to do is trade pieces. That's it. So when the bishop moves out of the way, just take the bishop. Just take the rook. Go here, attack this bishop. Like, I mean, first of all, this is just a free bishop. I mean, takes on C3 is just free, but Jack Penguin deduces that bishop C3 threatened his rook, lifts the rook to move it out of the way, and it's just mate. Jack Penguin just blundered mate in 2 after the rook slides back. It is the end of the first game already in 19 moves. Joe Roll, recovering from what seemed like a completely lost position, is winning game 1. Let's see what happens in game 2. Wow, that was something. D4, D5. Now we have Joe Roll playing with the white pieces instead of the black pieces. We know Joe Roll is comfortable with the London system. That's what he prepared to bring to this event. We have an opportunity for players to trade bishops. That's what Jack Penguin is indicating that he wants to do here. Joe Roll playing principled. Now if you take his bishop, we will take with the H pawn and open up our rook on the open file. So Jack Penguin is not incentivized to obviously take that bishop. Pawn to E3, knight out for Jack. Jack is striking with C5. We actually reviewed this in some of Jack's prep games for this match, to strike in the center with C5 against the London. And now we have a counter strike of C4. So all these pawns are just completely staring at each other, reinforcing here, bringing this bishop out, preparing maybe to castle is going to be Joe Roll, and bishop to A6. Now I would have preferred if Jack brought the bishop to B7. Bishop B7 would have been a lot nicer. This diagonal is very strong for the bishop. This one's not as strong. You also lose the mobility of moving this pawn out, but okay, it's still defended by a knight. That's fine. Knight out, and okay, now this isn't defended by the knight anymore, and now you have ideas like queen A4. Queen A4 immediately targets this bishop that's loose here in the corner. It also targets the knight. So you're going to have to spend a move moving the bishop back to the square it wanted to be on anyways, but okay. We have castles, knight coming out to B4, very aggressive here, hitting this, putting some pressure here. Also, now we're defending the bishop again. Okay, bishop slides back, knight comes to the center, bishop to H4. Now, it might have been actually reasonable for Jack to have considered taking this bishop here, because now when you recapture with the pawn, you're no longer opening up the rook here. Instead, you'd probably rather capture with this pawn and try to open up the rook over here. Knight E4 is a beautiful square for the knight. It protects this bishop, it attacks this bishop, it attacks this knight, and now bishop to H4, attacking the queen defended by the knight. Okay, blocking with the F pawn, now A3. Joe Roll playing top engine move here. A3 is beautiful, kicking out the knight, probably forcing it to a more passive square, and then after which you're going to have a move like C takes on D5, which like attacks the knight and also attacks the bishop. There's some weird things that are starting to unfold in this position, but Jack Penguin decides, I'm going to counter-strike your piece with danger levels, attacking you while you attack me. The only issue is, once I take this knight, is what Joe Roll does, we also unlock this attack on the bishop, which should have been on the B7 square. So now taking the bishop is what Jack Penguin's going to do, and Jack Penguin's down a piece. Jack Penguin's down a bishop, and he's going to try. I mean, he's going to try to get back here. Jack Penguin, the look on his face during the commentary, during the stream. But G3, white's going to hold together. It's +8. Black isn't even castled. Things are looking very, very good for white. B5, taking here. Look at this pawn chain. Jack just allows Joe Roll to gobble these pawns. Pawn up, pawn pushes to B6. Trading rooks. Okay, checking the black king, and the black king decides to go towards the queen side. But why? Why isn't it going this way? I don't know. King goes over, takes, queen B3, eyeballing this pawn, potentially defending the bishop, getting to a more active square. What is this king doing? He's just walking it over. Rook C1 lining up with the king. This is a beautiful idea here. Jack is missing the point though, pushing this pawn, loosening this knight. It's still defended by the queen, but what is this pawn doing? We're just going to take here, and this bishop can't escape. It's pinned to the king. The king walked into its own coffin. It should have hung out on this side of the board, but now look at all this. Look at everything is going to be coming in to destroy, to absolutely obliterate Jack's king. Queen slides over. This is absolutely devastating. Bishop C6. You can't take my bishop. It's defended. I'm threatening to take your queen. If you move the queen, we're going to take this. Oh my God. Best move here is knight C3. Willingly sacrificing your queen. Oh my God. Because it shuts down the pin on your pieces. So queen slides back, pawn takes, and now this is just complete collapse here for black. Queen takes, but oh my God, look at this. And then you're gonna uncork bishop B7. This is hit. This is hit. Queen can't take, because then we take the queen, and everything's just falling apart here. All the pieces are gonna be lost. Jack's gonna just lose the whole house. Joe even sacrifices his queen because he just has so much material that he's gonna be able to convert this. And after making two queens, not just one, but he wants to flex with two queens, Joe Rall is going to win. Joe Rall is up 2-0 against a player who has played 2 to 3 to 4 times as many games as he has, who's been playing chess for years longer than he has, a much more seasoned, experienced player. Joe Rall came to battle today. Game 3, and again, the first player to 4 points wins the entire match. Joe Rall's already halfway there. Players are switching colors again. Jack is on white, and Joe Rall is on black, showing off the Caro Con, another opening that we knew he had prepared for this particular event. Now, Joe Rall is playing e6 a bit early here before moving his bishop outside of the pawn chain, which is a little bit preemptive. Also could have taken the pawn first. Usually in this sequence, you do something like take the pawn, knight takes, bishop takes, knight goes back, bishop goes back. Something like this is the main line. Usually you don't play e6 here, but this is totally fine. Bishop to b4, pinning the knight to the king. Knight jumps into the center, and we have a position that's looking something like this. Now, f6 is actually played at the higher level in the Caro Con sometimes to control all these squares and also boot a knight that will eventually come here, boot it out, and maybe play e5 at some point. But it's tough because you're opening up your king along this diagonal, and there's some scary checks that can arise at some point. That can happen in the future. You just have to be very careful. So Jack is going to move the knight back. Joe will have to castle at some point soon, but first, of course, needs to defend the bishop that is hanging, defend or move the bishop that's hanging on b4. He decides to play defense here. And e5. We're going to be attacking. You really do want to castle here. You could also play something like knight f5 is what the engine likes. Also now allows your queen to defend that pawn. Okay. Castles, takes, and takes with the rook. I like this a lot, keeping the pawn in front of your king. Rook has this open file now, and eventually maybe you could even double stack on here with something else and have a really commanding control over that file as well. Knight to e5 jumps into the center. Knight to f5 jumps over into the center. But now Joe Rall blunders a very strong bishop g5. The computer for some reason doesn't even think this is that bad for black for reasons I cannot understand, but apparently it's still only plus 0.8 after black plays a series of correct moves that I guess activates the pieces in a certain way or maybe attacks something back and wins some tempos. But Joe Rall isn't going to be able to figure out how to do that. Joe Rall, of course, is human. I wouldn't be able to figure out how to do that either. Takes, damaging the pawn structure here with the bishop. But now you're trading pieces. Now you're trading pieces when you're down in exchange, and that's not going to be good. Yeah, now I like this position for white. And although the pawns are doubled, this pawn actually plays a role in reinforcing this pawn in the center, so it's totally reasonable to be placed right there. Queen g4 check seems like a fine move, and now knight to g7. Now the pieces are going to dance a little. Knight slides back to defend, and you just have to be aware that your knight is hanging. Jack Penguin's like, forget that knight. I don't need my dumb knight. Take it. Have my knight. I'm just going to go all in, balls deep with a move, queen h3. And I understand the idea here. Queen h3 is trying to target this pawn right here, but you can just play a move like knight f5 and you're just literally cutting the circulation of the bishop to the pawn. The only issue with knight f5 is the move g4. So instead of that, you needed to play a move such as e4 to shut down this attack. But g4 is hard to see, so instead we have a check. Okay, so we had queen here, queen here, queen here, check. Knight just slides back. We're not going to repeat. We're not going to move the queen back to h3. Jack Penguin's going to castle. Now Joe Rall's going to gobble a pawn. We're going to gobble the pawn back, developing our other pieces. Okay, now we go back to h3. So now this queen has gone queen g4, queen h3, queen g4, queen h3. Okay, are we going to see a repetition? No, we're going to bring the other knight into the party because now this knight is on a square that's able to defend the pawn in a different way. Like such, rook slides over to the open file. Joe Rall plays e5, which is a tricky move. This move looks like it's just hanging a pawn with a fork. The issue is e3 unlocks bishop along this diagonal, attacking the opposing queen. So Jack Penguin needs to slide the queen over. And now again, the queen's journey consists of queen g4, h3, g4, h3, g3. Okay, queen slides out now also to prevent this sort of attack from forking the queen and the knight. The pawn will still decide to capture. And now the position is totally equal. Black is a rook and a pawn for the two knights. So position is equal. But maybe not for long. Knight e4 is actually top engine move for black and the only move that holds equality. After an exchange here in the center, we now have e6. Jack Penguin just blundered this pawn because you could just take this now. Okay, Rook slides over to the open file. What is happening over here? What is Jack trying to put together? Now, I believe you could just kind of take this pawn for free. You can just completely ignore white's attack. The king is actually very safe over here. The rook covers this whole back rank. Queen can come back at any time to help defend. The bishop holds this whole diagonal. So yeah, just take a pawn and write home to mom afterwards. Like, have a nice glass of milk with a chocolate chip cookie. Like, not much else. But h5. Oh man, really weakening this king. Why is the pawn up there? The pawn should be with the king. Queen slides over. Bishop to g4, hits the rook. Now both rooks have pressure on them. The rooks are also defending each other, but rook takes pawn, attacks the queen. A very nice find here by Jack Penguin. And if you move the queen out of the way, we're going to win this rook. So a very nice take with counterattack, but Joe Roll gets fancy here. Maybe a little too fancy for his own good. Joe Roll sacrifices the queen on e4 because after the queen recaptures, then you can capture the rook. And now it's 2 rooks for a queen, and the only queen left is controlled by Jack Penguin, who is a queen against bishop, knight, and rook. But the bishop, knight, and rook should actually technically be able to hold against the queen, even with the pawn disadvantage, as long as you play perfectly. But even at the highest level, it is so hard to play against the queen. The queen is so powerful, and what it will slowly do is start checking the king until it can pick off one of the pieces via some sort of a fork or a skewer. And it's very hard to be the person playing with these pieces unless you're a computer, unless your name is Stockfish. So here's what's going to happen. Queen c4, and already in an accuracy here by black, because again, if your pieces aren't coordinated, Jack Penguin can play a move like queen d3 and immediately pick up the bishop. Jack Penguin doesn't see that, plays knight f7. Also, be aware, Jack Penguin only has 53 seconds on the clock. There is a 5-second increment, but that's all he's going to get. Joe Roll still has 2 minutes. Rook e8, defended by the knight. Pawn h3, preventing any sort of back rank shenanigans. This is totally reasonable. And now we do see that this pawn on h3 is coming in handy right here. Joe Roll is going to gobble up a pawn g4, and now Jack is just trying to get some sort of other piece in the game to maybe help the queen come in and try to get like some sort of a checkmate somewhere. I think Jack Penguin doesn't realize, the power of his queen and how he can utilize it to maybe attack multiple pieces at once to start to get into the position. Jack's just moving his pawns because there's no what else to do. Bishop slides back. You can just take the pawn on b7. It's a free, totally free pawn. And he does. He finally takes the pawn. This defends. Okay. Takes. Okay, check. Joe Roll is making some progress here, potentially. Joe Roll's making some progress. Check again on the king. And oh man, Joe Roll blunders the bishop. You can take either way. And Joe Roll now only has a minute on the clock too. Joe Roll is playing very quickly here. Both players playing fast. King h6, queen out, check. Take the pawn, king to h4. You have to be very careful with here. You don't want to put your king and queen in any awkward situations. There's still a rook and a knight. You have to be extremely careful. Don't let the rook line up at all with your king and your queen. Queen takes this pawn. Okay, check. Be careful here. Don't move your king down. Don't move it on the same varlkir as the queen. Oh my God. And in this position, Jack Penguin blunders his queen, and Joe Roll spends 8 seconds and instantly sees rook g5, losing the knight but picking up the queen. Players have very little time on the clock here and are just making moves. Pawns push. This pawn's getting very close to promotion. The king needed to get down here earlier to prevent this pawn, but now the issue is you're going to have to wind up sacrificing your rook for this pawn, or white's going to promote, and the game ends in a draw. The only other game in this entire tournament that ended in a draw was a stalemate between Beautiful Notes and Kixie. And this is the first game in the tournament that has ended in a draw due to insufficient material. Wow. This is game 4. Jack Penguin is black. Joe Roll is white. D4, D5. Joe Roll again is going to bust out the trusty London system. Jack Penguin and Joe Roll are going to play pretty much the mirror match in this variation. Knight d2, knight c6, everyone playing totally fine so far. The bishops come out here, pawn to c3, and then a short castle from Joe Roll, a6. Now again, the score so far is 2.5 Joe Roll to 1.5 for Jack Penguin. Joe Roll needs a 1.5 and he wins the entire event. This is game number 4. Joe Roll capturing the knight to mess with the pawn structure a little bit. Okay, Joe Roll is messing with the pawn structure, but he's down bishop for knight. The issue here is, again, Jack Penguin continues to put his bishops on these awkward squares on the edge of the board. And the reason this is so good for black, or for white, and for that matter, is that white will now have moves like queen a4, targeting the bishop, also targeting this weak pawn. The other issue is Jack is still not castled. It's move 9. Jack just is like simply wants to keep his king in the center. He just wants to move forward, make progress with his pieces. But Joe Rawls not going to play that move quite yet. We have rook b8 coming in, now queen a4. And now again, you just have to play a move like bishop e6 here. Bishop just needs to come back to the square. You need to sacrifice this pawn, perhaps block with a piece here so you can continue and still castle with your king. And life goes on. But instead, Jack plays rook b5, which instantly loses to the move b4, top stockfish move, because now if the bishop goes back, the rook is simply going to be trapped behind this wall of pawns, and one of the pawns will be able to capture it. If the bishop doesn't go back, it is 1, and Jack decides, you know what, I'll call this one an L for today. I'm just going to castle my king to safety, and Joe Rawl does win a piece here. Rook, for some reason, goes to b2. I don't know what Jack's doing with this rook. Rook went b5, then b2. I don't know what the idea here is. You're not really attacking anything, and the rook's just very awkward there, but okay. Queen is now going to gobble that pawn that was placed on c6 a while ago. Rook e8 again, simply just moving the rooks to random squares. I don't necessarily know what rook e8 does. You ideally would have wanted to play queen e7 and then put the rook also maybe on this open file, or at least on the c file with the idea to play c5 at some point, but rook e8, bishop takes another pawn. Joe Rawl is now up a bishop and 2 pawns. Now, mind you, his couple pawns here on the side of the board are a little bit awkward, but he is up 2 pawns. Queen comes out of the way, pawn e4, okay, and we have a bit of an exchange in the center. Jack Penguin is attacking the queen. Jack Penguin is also attacking the knight. What do you do when a piece attacks 2 pieces, especially when one's defended? Queen's obviously very powerful. Move the queen out of the way, or you move the queen out of the way, or you move the queen out of the way. The queen needs to defend the bishop, obviously, so you probably would want to move the queen maybe here, or here, or here. Joe Rawl, out of all his possible moves here, with 7.5 minutes on the clock, plays knight g5, counterattacking the bishop, out realizing that he hung his queen. And the queen for Joe Rawl is lost, and Joe Rawl flipping out on coverage. He is so disappointed that he missed that. The game has to continue, though, and he's back to f4 is going to be Joe Rawl. Joe Rawl is going to retreat his pieces, try to consolidate. He's down a queen, and now Jack is going to pounce. Jack Penguin is going to come in here. He's going to maybe start applying some pressure. His rook now on this rank actually looks very juicy. If you ever were to move this rook out to attack it, you can gobble these pawns on this file. If you move this rook out to attack, you could start applying pressure onto these pawns, and things are looking really good now. Knight goes back, but you can just trade, and you're so happy to trade here as Jack. You are thrilled to trade. Now you just want to do something safe, like bring your knight back and counterattack the rook. You can gobble that pawn, 2 rook sides over by the king. Oh my goodness, you're going to win all these pawns now. You're going to get a pass pawn. You're going to get your rooks in the open file. What is Joe Rawl playing for here? I don't really know. H3, queen takes the rook, though. The rook was just hanging. Joe Rawl's pieces are flying off the board. Bishop slides back, counterattacking this rook. You can simply take this pawn. It's totally fine. But instead, we're going to put more pressure onto this piece, like this move a lot as well, too. Taking the knight, taking the pawn, bishop slides back, attacking the queen and attacking the rook. You can, of course, just take this. You can also go here or here, defending your rook and moving the queen out of the way. We are going to see queen d3 here. Joe Rawl is going to blunder his rook. And not only is he going to blunder his rook, he's blundering mate in just a few moves after queen takes here on f1. The queen's going to come back. The rook's going to gobble a couple more pawns. The king's going to try to escape, but it's just hopeless here. Jack Penguin has so much material. He has 2 rooks and a queen and so many extra pawns, and the king will finally be getting mated by a pawn. Checkmate on g6. Checkmate by the pawn. Everything here is covered by a piece, and Jack Penguin picks his first win up of the match. It is 1.5 points for Jack Penguin, 2.5 points for Joe Rawl. We're going to game 5, baby. Jack Penguin on white playing e4. Joe Rawl again showing off the caro con against Jack. We have knight c3. Let's see if Joe Rawl does the same thing this time. He does not. Last time he played e6, but now going for e5, just sacrificing a pawn in the center of the board. But bishop e3, a move like c5 is actually very potent here, setting up ideas of some sort of a fork. Bishop b4, pinning the knight. Knight comes in to give another defender here, and players are just going to develop normally. However, again, Joe Rawl did give up this pawn on e5. This pawn is now just a free pawn that's won. You can, of course, take this pawn back, castles, queen to d4. And Jack Penguin's idea here is clear. Attack the bishop and force it to either trade with the knight or retreat. But the issue is the beautiful move again, the same move that computer wanted before. c5 kicks the queen out. And not only that, but it's setting up a fork. The same fork as before. And the queen just has to go back. And there it is. Joe Rall finds this idea of forking the bishop and the knight. Jack is going to have to give away a piece. But instead of giving up a knight or a bishop, Jack Penguin gives up his queen. And not only does he give up his queen, but he allows a knight trade in the center too. After this series of moves, what is this position? Jack has lost his queen for a bishop, allowed another exchange of pieces. This knight is hanging. This pawn is hanging. This pawn will soon be hanging after the knight is captured. The pieces are just so discoordinated here. Jack plays c3, which kind of does something, but after takes, now your pieces are just kind of like in sticky situations here. Not the best for old Jack Penguin here. We'll see if he can cobble himself back out of this one. Bishop d7, pawn's gonna come up. Joe Rall just simply spending a move and then moving the bishop again, deciding to pin and put more pressure against this bishop. f3 is gonna kick that bishop out, but sort of make a weakness in the white position along the dark squares. Knight out, pawn up, hitting the queen. Actually a pretty reasonable move here by Jack. I kind of like this idea. Queen comes in and infiltrates the position, and a lot of credit for Joe Rall here. Joe Rall just squeaking the queen into all the cracks in the position, just getting it to apply the most pressure possible. Bishop is hanging here. Rook d1 comes in and helps defend the bishop, maybe setting up ideas like a bishop back here with the discovery and protecting. Knight comes out. Bishop here does attack the queen. I like this move. It's definitely reasonable. So queen decides to retreat. Joe Rall's going to play a little more passively, but the issue is you've run into a fork. Bishop takes, knight will take. That's probably the best move, is to take with the bishop. But Joe doesn't take. Not only is Jack going to win the bishop, but Jack's going to win a tempo on this queen, and the queen now cannot even pick up the pawn, which is defended by the knight. Position is equal. And not only is position equal, it's actually bad after the queen moves back because of takes. And even though Joe rolls up a queen, position is actually good. Look at how strong this pawn is here. Defended by the knight. Pawn will now take and open things up, but it's hard. It's hard to play this as white. Jack Penguin instead goes bishop g4, which loses now to taking this pawn. Just one move completely flips the switch, and Joe Rall does take. And after this exchange, now the presence of the queen is much more felt. It's a queen for two bishops, but the two bishops are not going to be nearly as powerful as the queen will be. We're going to have some pieces move around. Queen is going to go to c7. These pieces are looking a little bit sketchy here. You have to be very careful. You have knight potentially being able to jump into some weird kooky places, and that's probably what's going to happen here. Knight to d3, rook up, check, and now Jack Penguin, instead of playing king h1, walks into a mate in one. Also just walking into this, all of this, moving the king to f1, and Joe Rall's up 3.5 to 1.5. We're going to game 6. Colors are flipping again. Joe Rall's playing on the white pieces. We do have d4 and probably going to be somewhat of a London system. Joe Rall is just playing principled opening moves, kind of just letting his opponent do whatever he wants to do. We have a bit of a transposition into somewhat of a London type position. And the position looks as follows. Now, the issue with this position for Jack is you're allowing Joe Rall to play knight e5, which actually just forces the queen to go back to a different square. And what's going to happen here is after the queen moves back, the knight will take, pawn will take, bishop will take, and you're just winning rook for bishop. So you don't want to be putting your queen directly in front of your knight like this. Instead, you perhaps wanted to reinforce this knight with your knight or something like that, ideally after bringing this bishop not there, but out somewhere. Anyways, Joe Rall's not going to play that and give Jack a chance to redo his maybe perhaps poor decision, but castling is what Jackson decided to do, and Jack Penguin a very fast, long castle. And if this wasn't an issue that was looming, I would perhaps be happy with Jack's position, because you don't often play against someone who queensides castles against the London, especially at this level, and Jack is mixing things up a little bit, and I think this is going to take Joe Rall outside of his comfort zone. The only issue is probably going to take Jack Penguin outside of his comfort zone as well. Queen e2, knight comes out to e7, pawn in the center. Okay, Joe Rall trying to break in the center. I don't like this so much for Joe Roll because his king is still in the center and his king and queen are lined up. And Jack Penguin, he most likely needs to take this pawn, but even if he doesn't, probably needs to move his bishop back and instead plays F6, sacrificing his bishop for seemingly no apparent reason. And now he's just down a piece. Knight will take, but he's down bishop for pawn. And Joe Roll, no fear, also longside castling. Now, Jack Penguin, to his credit, is going to keep getting in here. He's not afraid to trade pieces. And actually, trading now after Joe defends like this is actually pretty good. You're splitting up all these pawns. These pawns will be weaknesses that you can target for the rest of the game. But instead, we're forcing Joe Roll to trade with us, which I don't like as much for Jack. Jack needs to be creating weaknesses in the white position to play for something here. And G4, this is an intriguing find by Jack Penguin after H4, not taking very disciplined move here, hits this knight. And now the knight needs to go somewhere very passive. And then this knight will be able to capture this pawn in the center, which is exactly what happens. Jack Penguin is just slowly getting a little bit of material back, eking a little bit of advantage back. Okay, we're attacking the bishop. We're attacking the queen. Okay, queen slides back. Now, queen b4, applying more pressure to the bishop. Some pieces are maybe getting into the attack over here. Things are brewing up. And here, Joe Roll takes the pawn on g4 instead of moving his bishop to safety. This is just a free bishop, and Jack Penguin snatches that bishop up. Queen e1 loses to queen takes g4. Joe Roll hung a second piece, and Jack Penguin again snaps that up instantly. Jack Penguin seeing all these mistakes, and this is where Jack Penguin shines in these games. Jack Penguin is very quick at picking up when opponents blunder. He's very fast at it. He doesn't miss it a lot, and this is how Jack has won a lot of his games in the previous matches that he's played so far. F3 is not going to stop Jack Penguin from continuing the attack. The knights are coming in. The horses and the queen are going to try to make this happen together. Queen takes the pawn in the center. King slides out of the way. That was check. Queen's going to gobble a couple pawns here, but honestly, all you're doing is opening up more files for Jack Penguin's rook to come stare down the board and potentially get more involved in the attack. But okay, d4, knight e4, queen back. Jack Penguin's like, all right, my job is done here. I'm up some material. Let's trade queens. Let's get to an end game where I'm going to be up a full knight. And then let's try to convert this for a win. Joe Roll's like, nope, I don't want to trade. But Joe Roll sidesteps his queen directly into an attack by the knight. Joe Roll spends 35 seconds just to blunder his queen. And Jack Penguin's crushing this game. Pawn comes out, queen takes pawn, queen pushes forward, queen goes here, check. The knight blocks all this pressure looming on the knight right here. A4, the knight just retreats. Jack Penguin's not going to give up any material. He's going to come down to F2. It's totally safe here. We're going to attack this pawn. We're going to come and attack over here. We're going to just trade pieces because we're up. And now that you're no longer defending your rook, we're going to take the rook right here to its check. And in just a couple moves here, we're going to see check on C3. The knight's going to come in, gobble the pawn, pawn to d3, and now, after king c1, a very clean checkmate. Nice job on move 36. Jack Penguin picking up his 2.5 points. There is only one game left in the series. If it is a draw, it will be going to Armageddon. Joe Roll just needs a draw. Jack Penguin needs to win. Let's see what happens. d4. D6. Joe Roll's mixing things up a little bit. Knight F6, E3, G6, and it looks like Joe Roll is playing some sort of a King's Indian. We actually talked about this when Joe Roll and I were prepping for this event when we were doing our training session. Joe Roll was interested in trying out the King's Indian. I think he watched a video about it because he's playing this very nicely so far. He's probably going to play for either E5 or C5 here, right? This knight will eventually rotate back so you can play F5 at some given moment, and you will have a nice attack on the king side. Jack Penguin's going to play bishop d3. You have to be extremely careful when playing moves like bishop d3 because these two are susceptible to some attacks if you're not careful. And we'll see what happens. Rook e8, preparing some sort of center expansion potentially, and kingside castle. Kingside castle here, knight c6, and Jack Penguin blunders something devastating, which is kind of challenging to see, but in this position, Jack plays rook e1 himself. The only issue with rook e1 is you have blundered e5. Why is this a blunder? Well, if takes, we will take with the pawn. You cannot take the pawn or I will win a piece defended by the rook. If you move your piece back, it is a fork and Jack Penguin's lost on move 8. So what is he going to do here? Well, Joe Rawl prepared this. This is a common idea in the King's Indian. So Jack Penguin's like, okay, I'm going to go down with a bang, pawn to d5, counter-attacking the knight. And of course, the best move here is simply just moving your knight back because this is still a threat and this fork is still a threat. You can just undevelop your knight here. Joe Rawl is going to play a move that's still totally fine, but loses the initiative a little bit, taking the pawn. Because after you take this pawn, another interesting move here played by Jack Penguin. Very good finds here by Jack. Bishop g5, now counter-attacking the queen while moving your bishop out of the way of the attack with a tempo. Now Joe is going to come up with an interesting resource here. f6 now counterattacks the bishop. So you're threatening this and you're threatening this. And Jack Penguin is going to counterattack of his own with e4. Oh my God, what is happening? So now this is hanging, but this is also hanging. If you take the bishop, knight is going to move out of the way. Oh my God, best move is knight takes e3. Knight back to b6, just playing very, very safe, moving his knight out of danger. And all Jack Penguin now here needs to do is just retreat his bishop. Jack Penguin meticulously worked his way out of this position, only losing a singular pawn. Just throws away his bishop. How does this move throw away the bishop? This is a check, but there's bishop e6. And Joe Rawl sees it. Bishop e6 defended by the rook, hitting the queen. This is still being attacked. And now Jad just sadly has to move the queen back to d1. Back to the home square he goes, capturing this pawn. Joe Rawl has doubled g-pawns. However, the g-pawn cannot be captured, it's defended. And the g-pawn also can move forward and still be defended. This g-pawn might be an asset. Not only will the g-pawn potentially aid in the attack, but look at the rook now on this open file. This has turned into not only a material advantage, but also a positional advantage, probably. And you look, we have g4. G4 starts the attack rolling. Rook is going to come over. We're going to see some action here. Cracking open in the center now is Joe Rawl. Joe Rawl just playing on all sides of the board. The ponies taking full control of the queen side, the pawns in the center. There will be activity over here soon enough. Take, pawn to c4, bishop slides back. Knight is going to be a little bit passive here on a3. I would have maybe liked to see knight c3 there instead. Jack Penguin did not realize that his bishop was hanging. Plays knight a3. Now he's 2 full bishops down. This is game 7 and Jack Penguin is down 6 plus a pawn, 7 points of material. This is a devastating position. I don't know if I could win this position against Joe Rawl. I'm 1500. So, I mean, hey, listen, let's see what Jack Penguin can pull together here. c5, knight comes to the center, knight c4. The pawn is moving down the board. Okay, this pawn is pushing up. Pawn gonna be taken with one of the pieces, and it is. Pawn is captured, but now the other issue, and again, Jack Penguin's not seeing these discoveries. e4 opens up an attack on the rook, and Jack just takes it and loses his rook for a bishop. Oh no. And not only that, but the attack is still stirring. Bishop comes out, hitting the rook. Then we have rook back. Then the knight is able to take the rook, and now the knight takes this knight, and then this knight is captured, and everything is falling for Jack. Look at how many pieces Joe Rawl has. Jack has no material left. It's queen and knight. Queen comes back, maybe trying for something, but queen e1, knight has to come defend. Bishop comes out, threatening mate in 1. Only move is h3 or h4 to not lose instantly. The king is running out of its house. It is running away. King h4, rook takes, rook comes out and checks. g4 trying to rebuild the house around the king, but the king has nowhere to go. This is check. Is this not mate? f2 is just mate in 1. Joe Rawl misses f2, instead playing bishop f5. Jack is sadly in a position where he feels like he has to sack the queen, which can now be taken in 2 different ways. Pawn takes. The king is going to come out. You're going to win the rook back, but it's going to be mate in just a few moves here. And Joe Rawl is going to become the winner of the Pog Legends Chess Streamer Tournament by a final score of 4.5 to 2.5 after 7 full games. Congratulations. I'm so very proud of you. If you liked the video, consider subscribing. There's a lot of other cool chess content on our channel. There's videos that are going to come up right here. I really appreciate you stopping by on YouTube. Come hang out with us live on Twitch and that other good stuff. Yeah, links in description. You know the drill. Take care, everyone.